Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Canadian Muslim News on Muslim Network TV from Toronto. I'm Mohammed Maxwell Hassan, and coming up, an interview with researchers about the young Muslim identity in the Canadian context. Here's what's making news. Federal government to compensate First Nations children $20 billion. Lowest income Canadians are more likely to suffer opioid-related deaths. The mayor of Toronto directs contractors to reinstate Sikh guards. Ugandan Muslims condemn sale of pork near Islamic burial sites. And now the details. Canadian government and Assembly of First Nations have agreed on a compensatory deal worth $20 billion on Monday for the neglected First Nations children. The settlement is by far the largest in Canadian history. The deal recognizes the harm done to the First Nations families by poor government policies and lack of funding since 1991. The federal court and the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal's approval is the final step before the money is handed out. The two parties are also working to allocate a separate amount of $20 billion to reform the First Nations Child and Family Services program in the next 5 years. A study conducted by the University of Waterloo over 17 years shows that high-income Canadians are 4 times less likely to die from opioids than those with meager incomes. Canadians within the lowest income groups are also susceptible to emergency visits 5 times more than wealthier Canadians. Separate research carried out by a McGill University scientist shows that opioid painkillers are no more effective than over-the-counter painkillers. A study of 47 patients with mild surgical procedures using opioid prescriptions showed no considerable difference in pain tolerance compared to patients using regular painkillers. The City of Toronto has directed contractors Monday to provide religious accommodation to the laid-off security guards around N95 masks. Toronto's masking mandate updated in June requires security guards to wear N95 masks to avoid the transfers of COVID-19 infection. Following the new rule, contractors ordered workers to clean shave their beards to properly seal their mouths and noses. The requirement left around 100 contracted Sikh guards laid off, as the beard is an integral part of the Sikh faith. In a statement released yesterday morning, World Sikh Organization demanded the city review the clean shave policy. The Ugandan Muslim Supreme Council and Muslim members of the parliament have condemned on Friday the sale of pork near Islamic burial sites. The council's spokesman, Ashraf Muwalla, says that selling pork near the graves of Muslims may lead to conflict between members of two faiths. Muslim members of the parliament referred to the act, quote, an abuse of religion, demanding it to be immediately stopped. MP Mohammed Kato called for the education of people so that they could respect each other's faiths. By Koi, District Chief Qadi Sheikh Sadat Badullah urged the authorities to pass a bylaw on the sale of pork in public places. The Interreligious Council said that there is a need for every Ugandan to respect each other's faiths. And that's all for the news. What does it mean to be a young Muslim in Canada? Well, the Social Science and Humanities Research Council funded a nationwide study to examine this conundrum. Leading the research and with us here today is the principal investigator, Dr. Amar Jamal. Thank you so much for being with us on the show.
Thank you so much, Muhammad, for inviting me for this important show on this important topic, which is very close to my heart and to many of you. So I'm very pleased to be here with you.
100%. So as a starting point, what was the key finding that surprised you?
Yeah, it was, as you said beautifully, it was the study basically on who am I, a Muslim youth, Canadian, and then Arab, Pakistani, Turkish, and all these multiple identities, multiple stories, multiple journeys. So basically, I wanted to explore the construction of Canadian youth identity and how identities are negotiated and transformed with a larger conflicting context. So as you said, it's a national study that we conducted. We conducted interview with Muslim men and women across Canada and mainly in major cities in Calgary, Alberta, and Toronto and New Brunswick and Waterloo and Vancouver. So all those, and we collected stories from the Muslim youth, individual stories. So the key findings quickly is very interesting, that the first key finding that I can relate to, and which was really kind of a bit of surprise at that time for me, was the main challenge, the critical challenge that Muslim youth are facing is not any practical challenge, it's more intellectual challenge. Understanding Islam in their own context.
Understood. So Dr. Amar, out of curiosity, any particular reason that keeps the youth connected? We were talking about intellectual, of course. What's keeping the youth connected with the religion despite all of these challenges, whether it be intellectual or otherwise?
Yeah, despite all of these challenges, basically what keeping them well connected is throughout their journey, whenever they go through difficult times in their journey. Like there was a very interesting journey in the beginning, they may be disconnected with religion, but at the later point, like for example, from grade 12, I have seen stories in which they were a bit of disconnected and giving a bit hard time to their families, parents, and communities. But I see that when they go into the university, and then when they go through lots of challenging in the universities, they get connected with religion. They find peace in religion. The spiritual aspect of religion is playing a key role in keeping them connected. Second point for that is basically that one is the spiritual aspect, the other one is this reactive identity, in which when they see there are suspicion and there is a bit of racism around them, around Muslim, around their identity, that reactive identity is in shaping, and it is connecting them together with the mosque, with the religion, and with their community.
So curious, Dr. Amar, could you elaborate a bit more on the spiritual side? Like, what is it in particular that the youth are seeking that they wouldn't otherwise get anywhere else?
Can I share a story? Very quickly. I was interviewing a young man, and I said, what's in it for you in religion? When you go to gym, you get healthy, you eat good food. What about mosque? Why you go to mosque? And he looked at me. He said, you know, you are wearing these glasses? I said, yeah. He said, these glasses are providing you the lenses to see the world. I have my religion as my lens to see the world. When I am in stress in my exam, it was November. So he said, you see, professor, in November, so much stress all around the campus. I said, yeah. He said, but I work hard and then I leave everything to Allah, to my Allah. And then it gives me peace and tranquility. So he said, so this is the lens, this is the context. Religion is the context. Religion is the identity that is giving me that strength to keep me on track. Amazing. So this was one thing which was connected, and I was inspired by some of this very emotional conversation.
So interesting, Dr. Amar. Now, with that lens, you can imagine the scope of global conflicts, and there's no shortage of that happening. How is that shaping their identity all in all, and using that lens to make sense of what's happening around them?
Yeah, of course. This is one of my questions, that how, and I ask this in different ways, that they are very much concerned about how Canadian society at large is not comfortable with religion, how the media is portraying religious extremism in Islam. All the wars in different Muslim majority nations have an impact on them. But they are trying to find their ways. They are trying to learn their religion. In this context, I ask from them that what's the difference between your religion and the religion of your parents? And it was a very, and this answer is coming all the way throughout in a majority responses. And it says there is one difference, and then difference is why. WHY. My parents, they don't say why to different things. But I am critical thinker. We are critical thinkers. We ask questions, as it also relates to my earlier response of intellectual challenge, that they are asking questions. So similarly, they are asking questions about all these wars and conflicts, why it's happening, what's going on, right?
So,
And
Dr.
how
Amar,
Canadian media is portraying Islam in such a negative way.
now consider this ironic, but let's ask, why is this the case? How come the youth now, in your estimation, why are the youth now asking why, and the previous generation maybe didn't as much? Any link there?
It's a brilliant question, that because these youth, they have their own context they are living in. They are living in a different context. They are not living in any other countries of their parents, like Pakistan, Afghanistan, or any Arab countries. They are living in a Western countries where the questions are encouraged, where questions are shaping way to new knowledge and new learning. So they can't accept it the way we accept it in our own context. They want to know answers. They want to ask questions. So if, as I mentioned earlier, the major challenge, the biggest challenge is intellectual one. If Muslim youth don't get appropriate responses and answers to their question, so they won't be on this track anymore. So that is something we all need to look into it. And they are in a journey of unlearning, relearning their deen.
Of course, understood. So now, final question for you is, any recommendations emerging from the study for parents in the community? We talked about the youth specifically, but addressing it to parents.
Yeah, there were lots of recommendations, which needs lots of time, of course. But quickly, at a bullet point, if we don't have time, binding from the beginning. It's very important at a very early age that parents, sometimes we are so much busy in our work and all activities, and being immigrant, of course, I can understand all those challenges. But if you want to have healthy, positive youth, we want to have those strong, resilient, confident personalities, we need to be focusing on our strong relationship and binding from the very beginning. Second recommendation that is emerging, and that is that how to make those relationships. So someone said it beautifully, that it's like a nucleus and orbit, right? So if you don't want to make it too tight, because it will smash, and you don't want to lose it, because then it will be just away from you, right? So you don't want to lose it at the same time, but you don't want to be too tight. So being rational and having solid reason and keeping that relationship intact with the flexibility. And the last point, just quickly, is that, my friends, values are caught rather than taught. It's very important that we learn. If we need to be role models. So sometimes we are overly focused on youth and children, and at that moment we forget about ourselves. So we will be the role model. So we also need to pay attention to ourselves. Just one last recommendation on the community aspect. It was parent aspect, and which is really important. And that is what youth were saying to me throughout in all these cities, that they are disconnected with mosque in various ways. And one of the reasons for disconnection is that judging and labeling. When they go to mosque, in various ways, they are judged and labeled. So it is critically important that we embrace them the way they are.
100%.
With their identities and 100%. Give them leadership. Yeah.
100%. Thank you so much, Dr. Amar, for sharing your insights, and all the best on your future research.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleased to be here.
Get more informed by supporting Canadian Muslim News by subscribing. Stay tuned for the next episode. Assalamu alaikum.